The applause from the auditorium had already fizzled out as I stepped onto the stage. With the scroll in my sweaty hand and borrowed suit itching at my neck, I felt the air in the room tighten, as if everyone was bracing for what I might say. The faculty sat in 2 rows near the edge, faces uninterested, while the parents, all the mothers in pearls and fathers in buttoned jackets, stared expectantly at the graduation speaker, me, the one student no one quite understood. I want to talk about dreams, I began, my voice echoing through the hall. A shuffling started in the seats below. The principal, Mr. Choi, shifted uncomfortably, shooting a glance to the vice principal. I tried to ignore it. My dream isn't to join a big company or become a lawyer. I want to make films that mean something to people, films that... Suddenly a cough, pointed and theatrical, cut through the room. It was my uncle sitting 2 rows from the front. Before I could continue, the principal rose from his seat, quickly taking the microphone. "Thank you, Yiwon, that was inspiring. Please give him a hand." A few polite, awkward claps. My mother wouldn't meet my eye. I walked off the stage burning with humiliation, but walking straight, head high, dignity held tight inside my rattled chest. At home, the conversations grew sharp, voices bouncing off the apartment's thin walls. My father would leaf through the newspaper at the cramped dinner table, not looking up as he said, "Making movies isn't for people like us." My mother wrung her hands, whispering prayers that I would wake from my fantasies before it was too late. Then there was my sister Sujin. She'd ask, half mocking, half genuine, "So what, you'll be famous? Oscars and red carpets?" The sarcasm strung more than outright anger. Around the neighborhood it was worse. The Ajumma from 3B told my mother loudly in the stairwell, "At least my son is doing something real, not this movie business." Sometimes when I left home lugging my battered camera bag, the high school kids at the corner store would grin and make exaggerated director poses, shouting, "Cut. Action," whenever I walked by. As far as I could tell, nobody believed, not a single person. I couldn't even fault them. Filmmaking in Seoul was reserved for a certain tribe. Those with connections, with money, with faces you saw at arts high schools. Not working-class kids from Mapo-gu who'd only ever shot family birthdays or street scenes on a borrowed DSLR. Still, when it was late and the city quieted to its midnight hum, I'd hole up inside my tiny room and play the same films again and again, scenes I wanted to study, moments I wanted to steal. Unable to sleep, I wrote down shots in a battered notebook, and sometimes stubbornly believed that I could make something worth watching. After graduation, I faced decision after decision, most revolved around what to give up. Accept the job at the local logistics center or try again for another internship. Eventually, I pieced together a fragile hand-to-mouth existence, working cafe shifts, editing wedding footage, shooting short documentaries for NGOs on a shoestring. I learned how many doors could close in one city and how it felt to walk through the endless rainy backstreets after another day of industry professionals telling me I didn't have the right look, the right connections, the right portfolio. One winter, when a film contest opened for up-and-coming Seoul indie filmmakers, I entered with nothing except 2 loyal friends, a borrowed camera, and a script built from my own bones. We filmed on rooftops and subway cars, stealing shots whenever we could, eating convenience store ramen at 3 a.m. to stretch our budget. That film didn't win. It barely got an honorable mention, lost amid the art school crowd with glossy technique and sponsored credits. But when it screened at an underground cinema in Hongdae, 5 kids in the front row stayed after and told me what it meant to them. Something clicked then, the slow, defiant understanding that success could be measured differently. Still back home, nothing changed. My father's brow grew more furrowed, my mother's sighs grew longer. "Your cousins are all moving on," she'd say. "Don't you want to be secure? Don't you want to be proud of me?" I whispered back one night so quietly she could pretend not to hear. I tried to keep my sense of dignity intact, building it out of small victories. A festival screening in Busan, a short-listed online, the respect of a crew who would work for lunches and subway fare. At times, hurt snaked its way up through my chest, suffocating me in shame. I told myself I'd never forgive them for not believing. I told myself I'd show them even if it killed me. Years passed in a flicker. I worked odd jobs in between films, pieces of my 20s lost to exhaustion and late nights. Sometimes I thought about giving up, going back home, apologizing, finding a life that fit inside the narrow lines my family had drawn. But then someone would reach out to say they'd seen something I made, and for a day or two the struggle would dim, replaced by a thread of stubborn hope. I met Minji in my third year of this grind. She was a sound engineer sharper than anyone I'd met, with a laugh that made everything blur around the edges. She didn't flinch when I told her what I was trying to do. It felt like the city finally let some light in. She once told me as we watched early cuts of my latest reel, "Don't let anyone set your ceiling, Yiwon. Most people's imaginations were tamed as children. You weren't lucky enough to get tamed." That night, for the first time in years, I let myself believe I might make it, that my story could loop back, find its way home one day. It happened faster than I expected. My second feature film, stitched together with favors, credit card debt, and nights spent worrying about rent, caught like a spark. It was gritty and uncomfortable, about a fractured family in a Seoul high-rise. It didn't flatter anyone, least of all myself, but it felt like truth. A small streaming service picked it up, word spread first in indie circles, then beyond. Another festival, international reviewers writing in awkward Korean. A prize in Busan. Suddenly I was the one giving interviews in cramped studios, answering questions about artistic vision and resilience. My parents watched me on TV for the first time, my father silent, my mother quietly weeping, unsure whether out of pride or relief. Money didn't pour in, but for the first time in my life I could live off my work. Our old apartment felt closer than ever, even as the city opened up around me. When news came that my film had been selected for the Seoul Grand Arts Festival, my family received invitations too. I could picture the scene, my parents debating whether to go, uncertain if it would be another disappointment, another small screening in a damp basement with a few polite claps. But this was different. Local news ran stories, posters hung around the Namsan Theatre, even strangers at the market recognized my name. My mother called one night, her voice tight and formal. "Your uncle and aunt want to come," she said, as if disguising her own desire beneath the formality. I told them the date and time. There was an awkward pause before she said, "We'll see." The air at the Namsan Theatre felt electric that night. My heart kicked wild in my chest as I scanned the crowd pouring through the lobby, old classmates, familiar faces. I spotted my father stiff in his suit standing by the wall. He gripped my mother's arm, her other hand holding my aunt's. Sujin was there too, in clothes sharper than I remembered, mouth drawn into a straight line. Inside the auditorium, the film played to a packed house. When the house lights dimmed and the opening title appeared, I ran my fingers along the seat, feeling every fret and ache years of doubt had left behind. 50 minutes in, a critical scene, my characters screaming across a tiny kitchen, the pain of misunderstanding thick in their voices. I watched my father, not the screen. Saw him flinch as the actor spit back the same words he'd once thrown at me. The room held its breath. When the credits rolled, the lights rose. For a second, silence. Then the sound of applause poured in, real and full. I stood, nerves frayed, people turning in their seats. The film's producer gestured, "Take the stage, Yiwon." I walked slowly, not to rush the moment. Up there, eyes blinking against the lights, I searched for my family in the sea of faces and saw them. My father, arms folded but his jaw working, my mother, tears streaming down her cheeks, hands shaking, my uncle, that old theatrical cough stuck somewhere in his throat, silent now, Sujin, wide-eyed. The festival director joined me, voice booming, "Tonight we honor a filmmaker from Seoul, someone who reminds us why we believe in art, in stories, in the people who refuse to give up." He turned to me. "Yiwon, tell us what keeps you fighting." I forced down the quaver in my voice. It's not always easy to hold onto your dream when nobody else can see it. Sometimes you're the only one left carrying it. But tonight I think dreams speak for themselves. I finally allowed myself a glance at my family. My father's face was unreadable, but he nodded, eyes shining behind thick glasses. My uncle finally clapped, loud and awkward and a little embarrassed. The whole community was there, neighbors, old classmates, even the Ajumma from 3B. For the first time, their applause felt directed at me, not just around me. Afterwards in the lobby, people pressed in with congratulations, strangers eager for autographs, journalists waving recorders. Through the crush my parents approached, everything went quiet inside me. Even the sounds around faded, like the air itself held its breath. My father stood tall, shoulders tense. For a moment I braced myself, waiting for the old refrain about real jobs and security. But instead, he reached out and gripped my shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice rough. "You really did it." My mother stepped forward, her hands trembling as she took my face between them. She looked at me as if searching for the child she'd worried over, the man I'd become. I'm sorry, Yiwon, she murmured, tears welling again. We just wanted you to be safe, but you were brave. Sujin cleared her throat. Guess you did get your red carpet after all, her eyes sparkled. There was no sarcasm left. Only awe. My uncle hovered to the side, clearing his throat, unsure. I turned to him. Uncle, remember my graduation? He nodded. You stopped my speech. You always called it ridiculous. I did, he admitted. We worried, you know. But we were wrong. He fidgeted, then grinned, shoving his hands deep into his pockets. Next time you need a cranky old man in your film, call me. It made me laugh, deep and real, right there in the lobby. I realized then how light I felt suddenly, how the years of hurt had worn down but not broken my sense of dignity. I understood that their skepticism had always been a shield, brittle but well-meaning. Minji found me in the crowd. Told you, she said, looping her arm through mine. You made it and you brought them with you. Outside, the air was cool, city lights painting the Han River gold in the night. My family walked behind me, chatting with my old classmates, their laughter ringing out for the first time in years. The community that once jeered now watched with surprised warmth. I paused on the steps, letting the crowd flow past. I looked back at the theatre, at my parents and their cautious pride, at the neighbors and friends who had seen it all. Sometimes they say the city changes you, but sometimes if you hold on long enough, you get to change the city back, showing them the proof of dreams made real, standing tall where you once stood alone. And in that moment, Seoul felt like home again.